Hello, Brandon Goldner here, and we will get to our discussion with myself and Ryan about the NBA lottery, but before that, had to jump in here real quick because between when we recorded and when this episode is being released, it was announced that Damian Lillard has made third team All-NBA. It is Damian Lillard's seventh All-NBA selection, which puts him with the likes of Patrick Ewing, Hal Greer, who is Hal Greer? James Harden, Allen Iverson, Tracy McGrady, Steve Nash, Bill Sharman, Dominique Wilkins, and Scottie Pippen, all players who have 7 All-NBA selections. It was a little touch and go this year, not because of his stats, but because of games played and the Blazers tanking the last third of the season. Just as a reminder, Damian Lillard averaged a career high 32 points a game, career high 46% field goal percentage, career high 64% true shooting percentage, career high 57% two-point percentage, hang with me here, and 7.3 assists, 4.8 rebounds, and shot 37% from deep. Damian Lillard had a year. It was a career year for Dame, coming off that abdominal injury that threatened to take away the last part of his prime. It was good to see him at his best. And again, him making third team, it was touch and go. And if you look at the rest of the All-NBA team, just to spit it out real quick, first team was Giannis Antetokounmpo, Jason Tatum, Joel Embiid, Shai Gilgeous-Alexander, and Luka Doncic. Second team was Nikola Jokic, Donovan Mitchell, Steph Curry, Jimmy Butler, Jaylen Brown. And then third team had Dame, Domantas Sabonis, De'Aaron Fox, Julius Randle, and LeBron James. If the Blazers had played better, if Damian Lillard had played more games, he would have easily been second team, probably would have been knocking on the door of All-NBA first team. And look, I think you can rightfully say Luka Doncic, his team didn't make the playoffs. Why is he first team? Shai Gilgeous-Alexander, his team didn't make the playoffs. Why is he first team? Leave it aside. It's amazing what happened that Damian Lillard again picked for his 7th All-NBA team. He was already ahead of Clyde Drexler as far as how many All-NBA teams Blazers player had made. Clyde is there at 5 All-NBA selections, and a little surprisingly, so was LaMarcus Aldridge. I guess when you just think about like how good was LaMarcus Aldridge, how good was Clyde Drexler, that you would think Clyde would have more than those 5 selections. But then again, he, played in the era of Michael Jordan, so maybe that, took a bit away from him. But at any rate, just had to sneak in there because Ryan and I didn't get a chance to talk about, because it had not happened when we had recorded. Now it has. Damian Lillard, super deserving. That makes 7 All-Star selections and 7 All-NBA selections. And just one more time, there are only, now there are only 35 other players. Actually, this might be updated, but 30 plus players who have more All-NBA selections than Damian Lillard. Pretty shocking, and maybe not super surprising to see the top of this list is LeBron James now, I believe, with 19, Kareem and Kobe and Tim Duncan all with 15, and then Karl Malone. Actually, let's go with Shaq at 5th with 14 selections. We don't talk about Karl Malone here on the We Like the Blazers podcast. Anyways, Damian Lillard, All-NBA, super deserving. I get the argument about the team. It was tanking. He didn't play enough games. Look, he was a first team All-NBA level player. And whether or not he gets that recognition will be lost in the sands of time, because really what we talk about when people retire is how many times did you make All-NBA? So for Dame, for now, it's 7. Maybe a podcast for another day. Can you get to 10 All-NBA selections? I don't think it's out of the question. Anyways, I want to get us to the show with me and Ryan, much more interesting because he's much smarter than I am. I can't even talk right now. We do talk about the NBA draft lottery. We're going to get to that right now.
Yo, what is up? You have found We Like the Blazers. I am Brandon Goldner here in teal, and there in red and black, which is much more appropriate colors for the Blazers, is the one and only, the witty Ryan Whitledge. Ryan, what's up, dude?
What is up? It feels like it's been, like 9 months since I've podcasted. I don't know. Have I missed that many?
It's almost as if somebody no-showed. I wonder who that could have been. Ryan.
It wasn't me.
Definitely wasn't you. It's almost as if this is something that we do because we enjoy it and not because it's our jobs. Shout out to all of the Blazers and NBA reporters out there. But yeah, man, how are you doing? Wait, tell the listeners, we're not doing video today, but tell us, look at what is behind you. Explain where it is that you're sitting and why you're sitting there.
So for anybody who watched video before, I am in a room that is now filled with everything that was shoved inside the sports hutch. So now that we're almost a month into our new house.
You got a new house!
And
let's go!
And in this house, there was what they billed as, quote unquote, an upstairs laundry room. And I saw it. And, so this is the wife's desk now that's up here. But she has an actual office downstairs. It's one of those. It actually has a built-in office room. So she didn't need this anymore. And I was like, oh,
right.
I said, I can fit the desk in there and turn that into the man cave. Everybody laughed at me, including the wife. She's like, there's no way.
Why?
I was like, I can do it. Just because it was such a small, weird, awkward space.
Yeah.
And so, I went and rewired it all myself, installed about 6 new outlets in it. And then from being at Nike, there was a whole bunch of the acoustic panels that were left over. So I have the entire ceiling acoustic paneled off. I have some that are strategically placed around me. Painted the room.
Those acoustic panels are insulated by Phil Knight's tufted hair.
and then painted in a red and black color scheme. Painted the ceiling to match the gray panels. Have the desk in here, mounted a flat screen TV, and then hung all the rest of my stuff and got some shelving. And now the wife is always giving me crap for being a shitty decorator and having the taste of a quote unquote typical college boy. And when I was done and unveiled it to her, she's like, I'm not going to lie. This actually looks significantly better than what I thought you were going to do with this. So it even needs the wife seal of approval. So.
And jokes on them, having a space where you can actually control the sound is like the number one thing that most people who do podcasts can't do. Like this room that I'm in is very bouncy. I try to shove a towel behind the mic and it's basically just blank walls. Yeah, I'm legitimately jealous. I am also very happy for you and your family. Congratulations on the house. That's a huge milestone, one that I hope to one day achieve. I'm sure that may possibly happen for me, but not right now. So in the meantime, I will be jealous.
Well, the joke I keep maintaining is everybody asks me how I feel after I cut my first mortgage check. So that's still,
well, at least
ask me June 2nd how I feel about it.
Yeah, but I mean, at least you're investing in yourself and in something that is an asset that you control, or instead of throwing your money into an endless money pit of landlord does whatever they want. So the world of renting is necessary. And, again, I've been a renter my whole life. I am looking forward to being able to invest in something the way that you did. It's very, very cool. So congrats.
It was a lot of hard work and a long road to get back. And, the wife, this is her first house. So this was her lifelong dream to have a place to call her own. This is my second. Yeah. I had a house when I was with my ex, but, S hit the fan shortly after divorce and I ended up losing that thing. So it was one of those things where I was like, I wasn't sure if we'd make it back. But it was a couple of years of some really hard work and then a very fucking chaotic last 30 days. Before we actually got the keys. And so it's nice. And we kind of purged everything that we had, most of what we had when we moved. So that's kind of like the other interesting thing about it is like, we're still kind of in a phase of where like there's pictures of us hanging up, but we're like, why are there pictures in this rental? Because, you have this various things of like new furnitures or new bed or new couch. And we're just like, you're looking around and you're not seeing like that much of like stuff like that we're used to seeing for like the last 8 years. Cause we just decided fresh start, get rid of it. But it's definitely been a process. I had my first like full on like homeowner dad thing experience yesterday. It's nice weather. And so I got the pressure washer out, went pressure washed the driveway and cleaned the fence and all that.
Pressure washing is up there for me with mowing the lawn and sometimes doing weeding, depending on the type of weeding that is like fully satisfactory.
I intended to just pressure wash like a trellis and a sidewalk. And now my gutters are solid. My driveway is golden. The sidewalk in front of my place is good. All the cars are washed.
It's amazing how the combination of like a pressure washer and an edger can make your lawn and your concrete. I mean, it honestly makes your house look like twice as good. Just those two things right there. Yeah. So shout out to all the pressure washers and edgers out there. Well, I mean, honestly, again, like last time, Congratulations. You all deserve it. It's really, really cool. And yeah, like obviously like the logistics of getting a house are a huge pain in the ass, and you do have those mortgage checks to cut, but again, at least you're investing in yourself. So congratulations. The Blazers are investing. How do you like that transition? The Blazers are investing in both their past and their future and their present. So past, present, and future. The news broke. We wanted to talk about how, well, first of all, let's just look, we haven't been on the pod for a while. This show is going to be about the draft lottery. Okay. That's the topic. The draft lottery is remind me, it's next week. Today we're recording Pacific time, Tuesday, May 9. The draft lottery is
I believe it is next Wednesday. Let me see. Tankathon has it set for 6 days, 21 hours, 5 minutes, and 36, 35, 34 seconds from this time of recording.
Just so what day is it?
I believe it's Wednesday.
Why don't we just go ahead and Google NBA draft lottery, which is happening. Why doesn't it say? Yes, on Tuesday, May 16th. Okay, so
this is great for a pod in which we're going to do nothing but talk about the draft lottery. We're well researched on it.
With when it's happening.
What day?
Yeah, it's good to start. The point is we haven't been here for a while. The draft lottery is happening in about a week. It's happening on Tuesday. Anything from wild disappointment to franchise-altering great news. We're going to run through the different scenarios that the Blazers might find themselves in next week. But before we did that, I just wanted to kind of get your reaction and my reaction, because we are both Blazers fans and analysts, ? Blazers fans of a certain era where this news, I think, hit us both pretty hard in the nostalgia bone. The Blazers announced that their representative for the NBA draft lottery is none other than the natural Brandon Roy. There are so many reasons why I love this, and I know you do too. I'm going to kick it to you, but just really quickly, that the last time and the only time that Brandon Roy was a representative for the Trailblazers in the NBA draft lottery was when the Blazers got the number 1 pick, which they then used to select a player, but they got the number 1 pick.
His knees.
And also, like, I will say this too. Have you seen the video? It's from inside of a brew pub, and it's with Mike and Mike, and they're doing the NBA draft lottery party. Have you seen this video from 2000 and whatever draft that was that Odin was selected, 2009?
The 07 draft.
Was it 07? Yeah. Have you seen that video of the NBA draft lottery party with Mike and Mike as the Blazers were finding it? It sounds like you haven't seen this video.
No.
I feel like I should put a link to it in the podcast description, but it is so much fun to see they're kind of counting down. The Blazers had 7th best odds, and they announced the 7th pick, and it's not them. And the odds were a little bit different back then. We'll go through the odds for this year's lottery, but they got to 7 and it wasn't Portland. And so you knew right away that they had jumped up to the top 4, and people went nuts, and they go through 6 and then 5. Okay, 4th pick. And it wasn't them again. And then they had, so Brandon Roy representing the Blazers, Dominique Wilkins representing the Hawks, and then former coach Lenny Wilkins representing the Supersonics. I forget, he must have had a role with them at that time. I don't think he was coaching them anymore. But also a lot of rambling here, but I think Lenny Wilkins was a player coach when the Sonics won the championship in 78. I don't fact check me on that, but either had just retired or was coaching the Sonics at that point. But the point is, and they go through number 3, and it was the Hawks. They got a top 2 pick, and then number 2 goes to the Sox. Like the whole place totally explodes. Mike and Mike are like high-fiving each other. I think that Antonio Harvey and Wheels were also there, if memory serves. This video is a must-see if you're a Blazers fan, to see the Blazers winning the 2009 draft lottery. That was the last time and the only time that the Blazers sent Brandon Roy to be their representative at the NBA draft lottery. So, Ryan, I'm so sorry. This is what happens when I'm absolutely no notes. I just talk like an idiot.
Stream of conscience.
This news today. Yeah, I know. Mm-hmm. You heard this news today. What did you feel? What was your reaction? What went through your head?
I could not believe that it actually happened, because this is something, this is one of those like fan fiction. We've heard people say like, oh, well, they should get Roy because of the reason of like, oh, it's the good juju, because the last time he was there, we got the number one pick, so of course we need to do it. And it's just kind of one of those things where it's like, oh, really? Come on. Like, Roy has had a strained relationship with this franchise since 2011. It's been an issue to get him even back in the building. Like, I think last time he came, and we have that photo of like him and Dame, I think it was like for a Jamal Crawford thing or something, and not even like anything like Blazer specific related. And so, it's just been this strain. So to hear this news, I was more, I wasn't into like, oh, let's bring the good luck charm or anything like that. Like, don't get me wrong. Like, if you want to appease the basketball gods, this is a step in the right direction. Yeah. But I was more along the lines of being excited that this is a step in the right direction for the relationship between Roy and the organization to kind of be mended. And whether that be because now we're a couple steps removed from anybody that was involved in that, obviously, Paul Allen had his issues with him for, the insurance money and coming out of retirement and all that stuff. We're a couple different GMs down the road, a couple different president of basketball operations down the road.
Well, we're really quick on that, because the Blazers had like amnestied Roy, and if he was medically retired, so the Blazers got like salary relief. Correct. But if he were to play a certain number of games, the Blazers would be back on the hook. And then he came back to the Timberwolves and did indeed play that certain number of games, even though it was clear that he was, done.
Yeah, correct. So they used the amnesty clause on him, and the money that was paid out to him was covered by insurance because he was going to medically retire on that. But then when he signed with the Timberwolves, within whatever the window time frame was, because it wasn't immediate, I want to say like he took a season off, and then it was after that he decided to give it a go.
That's right. That's right.
It fell within that insurance time frame window, and so Paul Allen ended up having to cut that, the remaining part of that $88 million contract to the insurance, and that kind of. Granted,
which is rough. It's rough because the dude, I'm actually pretty sure he needed to have played 5 games, and he played precisely 5 games. And so it was like, it felt a little questionable.
The optics of it weren't good. So
it's rough because like, I don't think, I can't remember how I felt about it at the time, to be completely honest. It was a really long time ago. But, Brandon Roy, it's not like he didn't want to play. Like, obviously he did. Obviously he had like, in the playoffs, like his knees were going out. He came back, had that last final hurrah. I think it was in 2011. Like, obviously he put his entire body and the future of his joint health on the line to play basketball. Like, the dude wanted to play. So that wasn't the question. But so to your point,
we can pontificate about like what was the reason, like was it because
I just saw your monocle sneak out of your breast pocket as you said the word pontificate. Thank you for that.
You're welcome. But like, was it the organization that was sour on him because of that, or
Well, and Brandon Roy's kind of a private dude. Also,
exactly. Since he retired, since he got out of the league, he's been very private and personable. Like that was he was kind of forced to be the face, of the franchise. And he carried it well for not being that much of an outgoing guy. But since he's been done playing, he's coaching high school basketball, up in Seattle. So he's just kind of doing his own thing. So maybe now he's just reached a point in his life where he's, comfortable stepping back into some sort of light in that regard, especially tied to this franchise. So
I agree. And a franchise like the Blazers, it has so little tangible connection with its past. You think about all the players who played for the team who were like true diehard, I love the Blazers franchise. And how many of them are there? Like there's Dame. And then, then I don't know, probably, you'd say Jerome Kersey, who, rest in peace, and Kevin Duckworth. Terry Porter is probably one of those people, I would say, but certainly not Clyde Drexler, certainly not LaMarcus Aldridge, certainly not. Bill Walton had his checkered history with the team. And so the fact, I'm with you, the thing that matters to me as a fan is that Brandon Roy was my favorite player, had the best first name ever, obviously. And, to see this, it is really cool. It's like a connection to the past. It helps you kind of like, I don't know, care about the team in a way that I don't know, man, it honestly, it awakened within me parts of my fandom that I thought were dead. Like thinking about the Brandon Roy era is just different than thinking about the team now. I'm a different person. The team is different. I mean, the world is different. So it was really, really cool to see. That's how it hit me. I was like, no way. And I know that Joe Cronin Joe Cronin does a decent amount of media, especially compared to his predecessor, but he was on Jack Ramsey's with Danny Meringue. Actually, Brandon Sprague did not make that episode, but Danny and Danny asked him, do you know who's going to represent you at the lottery? And Joe Cronin's like, yeah, but I can't tell you who it was. And now we find out that it's B. Roy. Super, super cool stuff.
Well, and, to kind of touch back too, I mean, you ask about like people that, love the franchise. There's also a difference too. There's people that, love and have close ties to the franchise. And then also the people that love and have close ties to the community and the city, because I mean, for just as many people, I mean, it's a knock on how the organization maybe used to be run, that people would not want to be associated, players of like our generation from when we were growing up that we were watching didn't necessarily want to be associated with the team. But they all still lived here. They all still have houses in Lake Oswego and West Lynn, and they're at, love the area, but they don't want anything to do with the team. So anyways, I just hope that this is a good sign for like a turning of the leaf, or turning of the page, with the franchise and kind of mending a relationship. Now, whether this leads to, a jersey retirement or whatever, or, him coming and, being an honorary captain at a game or something like that, I don't care. This is one of those cooler things that they could do,
Just eventually let it be its own thing and appreciate it.
And if they turn around and after this, like say, and we'll get into this conversation here in a little bit, but say they get the number 1 pick, they draft Victor, for the love of God, don't then turn around and like immediately do like a jersey retirement ceremony for Roy, like within the first week of the season. That needs to be don't think it that way. Don't cheapen it. That needs to be its own thing, a couple years down the road.
That would be very cynical isn't quite the right word, but something it would be very weird. Right. And that's not going to happen. I don't think we have to worry about that. Yeah, it's cool. It's cool. And again, like I'll just repeat this point where the Blazers franchise doesn't have enough winning in its history to connect generations of fans together, I don't think. And so then you think about what is it that people connect with a sports team. It's the laundry, I guess, but that's not really, it's really the players. That's what it is. That's what connects you and I with the Blazers in the same way that perhaps our children or nieces and nephews or whatever, people of different generations connect with the team through the players, and having this bridge, even if it's just this one gesture, is cool. It gets people thinking about it. It gets people looking up highlights, Brandon Roy highlights, like watching him play, imagining what he could have done if he had had a healthy career. I went back and watched the Game 4 freaking highlight video again after the news on YouTube when I got home from work. Cause that is honestly like one legendary. Of the first time. It's legendary. And it's also one of the first times in my life. Like, and granted I was, 20 something. Maybe, no, that'd have been, just in my early 20s, right before, one of the first times in my life that I can remember crying for sports is watching that game. So, I mean, and just looking at the 2011 playoffs, the eventual champion Dallas Mavericks, that game was Game 4. It was in Portland, and Brandon Roy comes off the bench and just has this incredible end of the game, and ends with 24 points, 4 boards, 5 assists. 9 of 13 shooting when it was clear that he was physically limited, and winning that game, you're 2-2 going back to Dallas. And I mean, if again, it's what if, but like, if Roy had been healthy, that series could have been different. If Roy had been healthy, I'm not saying the Blazers would have won the championship, but it's possible that Dallas wouldn't have won. I mean, it's weird to think that the legacy of Dirk Nowitzki hinges on Brandon Roy not being healthy for that series, and ultimately that was the end of his career in Portland. But so it gets you. The point is, seeing Brandon Roy gets people to think about that stuff, and that's the kind of thing that the franchise doesn't really have. and needs more of. And by the way, is my argument why the Blazers need to do everything in their power to make sure that Damian Lillard retires a Blazer. That is a conversation for a different day. But is there anything else on Brandon Roy being a representative of the Blazers in the draft lottery that you wanted to hit on?
Nope. I just, I think it's like I said earlier, good to appease the basketball gods with this kind of stuff. They like the feel good mojo energy. So let's lean into that. Do I think it can actually work? No, but
well, to be fair, to be fair, if the world worked this way, where talismans and lucky socks change the outcome of our lives, we'd be living in a very strange and chaotic world. So, I don't believe in any of that. And if you do, that's totally okay. But yeah, I'm with you. Like, to me, this is more about the connection with the team and the franchise. And so now let's talk, Ryan, about the NBA draft lottery happening next week. If you're in the Northern Hemisphere in the United States, happening next week, Tuesday, the 16th.
Is your Wednesday.
My Wednesday. It'd be really nice to know the time too. Wouldn't it be nice if we actually knew what we were doing? We told people where they could tune in. You can tune in at 5:30 Pacific next Tuesday on ESPN. I don't know whether this is something you can stream on League Pass or not. I'm assuming, I don't know, actually. I mean, it's being carried by ESPN.
It'll probably be before one of the games. But I will say this locally, if anybody's Portland, Vancouver, greater area,
go to Ryan's house.
Well, no, well, you can come here. I won't be here because the Jack Ramsey's and then, the station that employs the two hosts on that 1080 The Fan, they are going to be at Brick's Tavern all day doing live shows and live streams. And then Danny and Sprague will actually be doing a live pod recording and whatnot reaction to the draft lottery. So anybody who's down there, Brick's Tavern, the entire station and all the guys and everybody will be down there starting at about noon. So, show up, grab a seat, whatever, hang out. I'm sure the festivities will get started about, 4:30 or whatever. But yeah.
So that's noon next week, Tuesday, May 16th. Just to reiterate the date yet again. So that's cool. I wish I could be there. Obviously, I'm in the incorrect hemisphere to attend such an event. But we wanted to talk about what we think might happen, what the implications might be for Portland, what they might do, what we're thinking about for Portland, depending on where they end up in the lottery. Ryan, we didn't, per usual, because we're both slackers, we didn't really discuss how we would run this through. My thought really quick is to go through the different odds at different positions and then to do it in reverse order. So starting with
step one, I think what we need to do is individually go through Chad Dewing's Twitter replies and find all the individuals who constantly ask him what percentage do the Blazers have at getting certain picks, and then just send those people a link to Tankathon and an instructional video on how to use Google. Because I'm always massively
welcome to your computer. If you'd like to know about
I am always massively confused about how people can tweet people questions about information that would take less time to Google.
So the same thing that you can use to tweet, you can use to look up information. And sometimes you're like us and you're unprepared, but we did eventually find it. So yeah, go to tankathon.com and look at the pick odds. So yes, I agree. So let me, unless you object, I'm going to go through the odds that the Blazers can have certain picks. And then we're going to go in reverse order, starting at the worst possible pick, and then we'll kind of reiterate the odds as we do it. And we'll talk about if they end up at a particular pick or maybe in a particular range, what we think it means for the Blazers, what we think it might mean for what they can do, what we think it might mean for how they can build, what we think it might mean for next year and moving forward. Does that sound okay to you?
Sounds fantastic.
Okay. Well, the Blazers ended the season with the 5th best lottery odds, and that's a little bit more confusing than you might think, and you'll find out why right now. The worst possible pick that the Blazers can get in the lottery next week is 9th. The odds are not very good that they're going to get 9th. They have a 0.6% chance of getting 9th. Then they have an 8.7% chance of getting 8th. And then you move into the 26.7% chance of getting 7th. That's the highest likelihood that they have of getting any single pick is 7th. And you might be asking, well, that kind of seems like bullshit. They're 5th best odds. And you're saying the best chance they have at any pick is 7th. Well, the accumulated odds of getting a pick above 7th are much greater than getting 7th or below. So that's where this comes in. And maybe if I'd been more organized, I would have said there's this much chance of getting this range of picks, but bear with me as I move through it. So 26%.
And the reason that they can drop down too is because every other team that's in this range also has a possibility of popping up. And once a team pops up, you drop down. That's it's how that lottery system works. Everybody's slotted differently.
Thank you. And that's a good point to note that any team in the lottery has a chance of getting a top 1, 2, 3, or 4 pick. And then depending on where they are, there could be a gap between then when they would have their next best odds. If you're looking at the odds, it's kind of like a stair step and a gap starts being created depending on where your lottery odds are. So the Blazers, I'm just going to do some quick math. They have about a 35% chance of getting picks 7 through 9. So that would not be great. Then you move to the 6th pick, 19.6% chance. Weirdly, they only have a 2.2% chance of getting 5th. And Ryan, to your point, that's because there's a greater likelihood that either the Blazers move up or someone behind them jumps ahead. And because of that, there's very little chance that the Blazers will actually just stay at 5th.
Yes.
So
there's more of a statistic possibility that somebody around them moves and they get shoved out of their spot.
Right. And that's why, I mean, if you're watching the lottery live, and you get to 9 and it's not them, you're like, thank God. You get to 8 and it's not them. Okay, good. Then you're really starting to pay attention at 7. And if they're not at 7 and they're not at 6, it's very unlikely that they're going to be at 5. And they could be, but they're probably not going to be. So that's kind of your first stage of watching is really right there. And then you get to picks 4, 3, 2, and 1. The Blazers have a 10.5% of getting any of those picks. They have a 10.5% chance of getting 4, 10.5% chance of getting 3, 10.5% chance of getting 2, and 10.5% chance of getting the number 1 pick. So that's about a 42% chance of getting a top 4 pick. So
yes, aggregate numbers, 42% overall for a top 4.
So, man, that's a lot of numbers. If I'm trying to, I pride myself on being able to take a lot of information and make it sound simpler, which, by the way, ChatGPT is going to take that specific skill that I think I have and make it pretty much obsolete. But anyway, until a robot takes my job, the Blazers have a very good chance of getting picks 6 through 8. And they also have a very good chance of getting picks 1 through 4. So I don't know, let's now back up to the 9th pick. And let's just start here. Let's say that lightning strikes in the absolute worst possible way. And every team that can jump ahead of the Blazers does so. And the Blazers get the 9th pick, which again, they only have a 0.6% chance of happening. Ryan, if the Blazers get the 9th pick, what happens?
Well, I think they have to select Grady Dick, the small forward from Kansas, right? No, sorry. I just needed to work his name into this as I'm looking.
Is that a real player?
Yes, he's Grady Dick he's a small forward from Kansas. He was their star player.
I wonder if his nickname is just great.
Well, most people that I heard just always referred to him as Dick. So,
well, Grady Dick, I haven't actually never heard of this player, to be completely honest.
So, he averaged 15.5 points, 5.7 rebounds, 1.8 assists, 0.3 blocks, and 1.6 steals in per 36 at Kansas. Anyways.
So wait a minute. Hold on.
No, I'm being facetious here because they're not going to select that. The only, and I'm sorry to kill your vibe here, but I'll have the same answer for picks 9,
this
8,
is half
7,
your
6,
show
5,
too. You're not
4.
killing a vibe. You're allowed to say what you want to say.
If the Blazers do not get the number 1 overall pick, that just means that they're trading it. And
okay, let's start there. I like how you I'm like, what? I don't buy that. But tell me your case.
You don't?
I do not.
Because if we're going to buy the line that Cronin has been selling, and that, I mean, even he just reiterated on that episode that you were talking about of the Jack Ramsey's that he did, that their intent is to build the best team that they can around Damian Lillard. Look at all of the
it's very possible that doing that means not trading a pick, even if it's not the number one pick.
Oh, see, I'm completely opposite.
Can I explain why? Or
Well, this is my real quick. This is my take. Am I allowed to
talk, Ryan?
No, you are not.
I'm asking permission to interrupt you and substitute my own stupid voice, my bloviations for your good analysis.
No, it's just so like when you're looking at a draft that it's generational talent. Right now, everybody's planning for Victor, and the minute that they don't have him, they're going to have to go into oh shit. Look around mode, whatever.
Yes, so by the way, first of all, I agree. But if they don't have the number one pick, they're going to try to trade it. That I believe.
Correct. And it's one of their best trade chips because if you're going to look at trading a player such as either Shaedon Sharpe, God forbid, or Anthony Simons or whatnot, you package it with, a top, I would hope, 4 pick or whatnot. In this case, you package it with that, it makes those trade packages a lot easier. It makes that avenue a lot easier. So, but I'm still of the belief too, that like, even if it's a 5 through 9, that thing's still on the board. They're not trying to keep it in any way, shape or form. They're using it to try to facilitate whatever big swing trade that they want to make in that case. Anyways, go ahead and tell me why I'm wrong.
I think the reason why you're terribly wrong and just so dumb for having that opinion. No, just kidding. I don't think they can necessarily trade a pick if they get it, if it's not number one. I think that the problem, I do think they're going to try to do that, but you have to look at what's happening around the league, particularly in the playoffs. And I know it's been a fun game to on Blazers Twitter, every time a team gets eliminated, we're photoshopping that team's players into Blazers jerseys. I did it today from the.
Oh, I'm not putting that bad juju out there.
Well, I from our own podcast account on Twitter @the Blazers, I tweeted out, a Photoshop of Jaylen Brown in a Blazers jersey because the Sixers beat the Celtics today. But the problem is that it takes 2 to tango, and the problem, I believe, is whether the perceived value of the pick is going to be enough with the salary filler that the Blazers have to add up to the type of player who the Blazers think they should get in return for such a high pick. I think it's actually pretty likely that if the Blazers get I think what's going to happen if the Blazers get picks number 2 or 3 or maybe even 4, that Joe Cronin and the Blazers front office will value that pick more highly than teams willing to trade players. And so I think it means that the Blazers will actually end up keeping that pick. And that creates its own set of questions. But what I don't think is going to happen is the Blazers trading number 2 or number 3 or even number 4 for a player who they genuinely don't think is worth it just to appease Damian Lillard. I actually don't think that's going to happen.
Correct on that front. I don't think that they're going to toss a pick out there like that. They're not going to do the old shay of I made a move just to make a move, and so that I can talk about the big move, regardless of if it was the smart move. But one of the things too to think about is with how so far everything is shaping up in the league. Teams that are still in the playoffs, teams that flamed out early. Woj had mentioned this, that it's good. Teams are trying to get their books in order and whatnot, and they're trying to tear it down from having 3 stars to 2 stars, trying to get those moves. And a very good way to be. And so basically you're looking at, it's not necessarily going to be a buyer's market, which doesn't necessarily bode well for Portland. But if you have a guaranteed asset and that you can say, here's a top 2, top 3, top 4 pick or whatnot, it's a lot easier to slide in and help grease the wheels for other teams and then pick up their players that they're jettisoning, star players that they may be jettisoning. We're not looking at every other team's number 1. Anybody who wants everybody else's number 1, that's not going to happen. But you start looking at their number 2s and figure out the ones that can pair well with Damian Lillard. You can start sliding in, and it's like, hey, if this team is getting rid of this, power forward, but here we have the 6th pick in this draft, you can take Jarcy Walker, God help me if I'm pronouncing his first name right. Or, we have number 3, here, take Brandon Miller. Now you guys have what is going to be a future star at a cheaper rate, but we're going to take this guy who fits now our more win now mode off your hands, kind of slide in and help facilitate those deals, if that makes sense. It doesn't have to be straight up, but having one of these top 10 picks is very good grease for the wheel to get some shit done.
Yeah, I agree. I think so. Neither one of us are like super cap experts, but again, the other complicating factor is the salary the Blazers have in return. So like, if the Blazers, like their most important salary pieces are Anthony Simons and Yusuf Nurkic, both of whom have, different salaries and also both have different perceived values on those contracts, where I think Anthony Simons is probably a slight plus value, given his age and his potential, and that Yusuf Nurkic is probably a slight negative, although his contract looks a little. His contract looks a little bit better. I think
there's a perceived bias in Portland to kind of view it a little more negatively than it may necessarily be viewed. Again, it's hard to look at these things in the lens of talking in generalities, because it always depends on what's the team.
Well, and that's why yes. Totally, it does. And it depends on where the team is in their life cycle. And like, we're kind of assuming, I think to this conversation, we are assuming we take Joe Cronin at his word that they're trying to build around Damian Lillard. So we start there. That makes it easier, right? Because if we were trying to permutate this out based on different Blazers strategies, which they probably have, but that conversation would take too long. So then to your point, yes, like what do other teams need? What do the contracts look like? So let me bring us back around.
If you're curious too, just real quick on this, because I just pulled this information up. So I mean, you're looking at too, like those, while we're talking salary fillers and those kind of things, those picks themselves actually do have legit numbers and salaries tied behind them. And so I'm not going to relay what the number one. I'm not going to relay what the number 1 pick is, because if the Blazers get that, great, we're just going to pay it and take the guy.
It doesn't matter.
Yeah, exactly. Totally. The second pick is, you're talking about an $8.2 million value. Third pick, $7.4 million. Fourth pick, $6.6 million. Your smallest of this end is down at the ninth pick, which is within their range. That's $4.2 million in salary. So, I mean, it's not an insignificant amount to sneeze at. You're talking between either half of or a quarter of a Yusuf Nurkic.
I mean, that's not like, so I really, honestly, this is where preparation is wonderful, but
that's where I'm saying it in the regards of like, okay, say the Blazers get the 4th pick. They have no interest in keeping it, but Team X out there wants that 4th pick and Anthony Simons and is willing to give up some form of a star.
That's what I was going to say, is that like, let's say Pascal Siakam, let's just throw it out there.
Okay, so those two salaries between Anthony Simons and the 4th pick,
right,
is over $30 million.
And Pascal Siakam makes $37 million in the final year of his contract. So I think it has to be within 20%.
120%. 120% is your window.
So that would be pretty close right there. And the Blazers could probably make something like that work.
Yeah, you throw a Keon Johnson or something in there, and there's your salary filler there. It works.
But so here's where I'm trying to get to, though, is we're talking about a player like Pascal Siakam who makes, $37 million. And then you're including Anthony Simons and the pick. You're talking about, Jaylen Brown, I don't think is available. I'm trying to look quickly. Jimmy Butler, he's kind of old, but goddamn, is he good? Like, it would be kind of fun to see him and Dame play for 1 year, maybe.
I think the Heat are making the finals, so I don't think Butler's on the table there.
Well, maybe not such a hot take. I don't think it matters really, like if they make the finals or not. I think they're probably pretty sanguine about the fact that they're ending the life cycle of that team's usefulness at some point anyway. And by the way, Jimmy Butler, goddamn, $45 million next year, 48 the next, and 52 in 2026. Holy shit, that's a lot of money. But the point is, like, it's not always super. The Blazers do have pieces to make a move, but not a ton of them. And like, so for example, if you're saying I'm going to get rid of the lottery pick and Simons and you're getting Butler back, like you can't even get to that salary level, right? Like, it really depends on the player. Like, But let me bring this back, and you can interject however you feel necessary. But I do want to bring it back to the 9th pick, because this could happen. It probably won't. I don't even want to say this, but I think the odds of the Blazers. No, it's less. So I was going to say the odds of them getting 9th are about what they were of the Blazers getting the number 1 pick in 2007. And pardon me, because I think I said 2009 earlier. It was the 07 draft where they got Greg Oden. And I think actually they had like a 2% chance back then, and that would be a 0.6% chance of them falling all the way to 9th. So, but Ryan, like, just really quick, like, what does it mean for this team if they fall all the way to 9th? What do you think the domino effect is of that? Anything?
No.
You don't think it really matters in the scheme of things?
No, because if it's not the number 1 pick, it's getting traded. Just means you got to find more shit to trade.
Okay, so I have a different take on this. I think if they fall to 9th, I think the Damian Lillard era in Portland is under threat. That's what I think. I think that's a domino effect.
Oh God, no.
The 9th pick.
I think that is one of the biggest over exaggerations I've ever heard of this.
Well, this is great, because the whole point of this podcast is to share stuff and let people react to it. So if this comes across as being really done and misinformed, it's great because it's getting people thinking. But I mean, this draft is deep, but it's not like deep all the way down, right? Like when you're looking at a lot of draft boards, you're seeing there's a clear number 1. There's a generational talent, Victor Wembanyama. Yes, we know that. Then there's like this second tier that has, depending on who you ask, definitely Scoot Henderson, and then probably Brandon Miller, and then one of the Thompson brothers. Some of them don't include one or both of those. On Tankathon, it has Amen and Ozzer Thompson going 4 and 5. But after that, it starts, it's the point is, I don't think the value of the 9th pick is enough to get you someone even like a Pascal Siakam, which some people would argue is not even enough to like make this team the contender along with some other moves. But like, so do you disagree? I mean, if you're Toronto, are you taking the 9th pick and an Anthony Simons and being happy with that? Like, is that something that you're doing if you're Masai?
I'm not trying to say that that's the entirety of the trade, but I'm just saying that pick has an intrinsic value. I mean, the other thing to keep in mind is do the Blazers take, if they do end up with the 9th pick, do they call Chicago and be like, hey, let's just, where it stands now. Do you want that? You want that Knicks pick? You want to get this off your books? I mean, Chicago, if you go and look at some of their stuff, they have no picks of their own. They need their freaking lottery picks. They need to get some back. So they may have an interest in taking that Knicks pick off the Blazers' hands. Well, great. Now you have just opened up the possibility of, let's say, and we're not saying the Blazers are trading Ant, but he's just the easiest name to throw out there. Now you have the possibility of the Blazers saying, all right, great. It's me as well. Love the guy. But anyways, of saying, all right, here, take Anthony Simons, the 9th pick in this year's draft, and then like our next 2 firsts that are available for you, and let's throw in a couple pick swaps. Those are the kind of things that are going to get the attention. So
that's fair. But here's the thing. You're changing my thinking a little bit, but this is what I lean back to. When teams are trading for picks, they're trading for potential and for possibility. When you know that your pick is like a top 3, a top 4 pick, that has disproportionate value, particularly in a draft that goes 3 or 4 deep. It has extra value than knowing for a fact you're getting the 9th pick. There is a different level of value. I think that you open up doors and you open up conversations with a higher pick that you can't crack with the 9th pick, because that's the one pick where you know where it is. The other future picks, you're kind of banking on the Blazers regressing at some point. If you're doing the cost benefit, if you're another team, you're probably actually feeling pretty good about the Blazers' future first-round picks. Those are probably more valuable picks than, say, a future Thunder pick, a team that has a young core that's probably on the up, whereas the Blazers in a couple of years are probably cycling out of the Damian Lillard era. So, but I guess my point to you is this, like, the one pick that you know where it's going to be when we're making these hypothetical trades is this year's draft pick. You know how deep the draft is, you know the players. And so I do think that like a top pick has disproportionately more value and opens up more doors than a 9th pick.
We'll see. I guess that would be the one philosophical difference that we're having, is that I believe a 9th pick still technically qualifies as a top pick.
That's
in the minds of the GMs. In the minds of the GMs throughout the league, anything that falls within a top 10, and this is a draft that has been referenced as being a deep draft, a top 10 pick in a deep draft can open a fair amount of doors. And you reference Oklahoma City. One thing about it is, while the Blazers, we're hoping that we're not back in the having to talk about lottery odds and lottery picks, unless the season went to shit and we traded Dame and, here we are for the next 5 years. But this is the chance to try to strike and make some deals before Oklahoma City is really good. And they start leveraging these 17 first round picks that they have over the next 5 years to start trading for some star players.
I mean, that makes sense.
Yeah,
that makes sense from the Blazers' perspective, but my argument is that it's not as enticing to other teams. And I just to agree with you a little bit, this is a deep draft. It's interesting when you look at the top 10 in this draft and you just run through the ages. Nearly everyone in the top 10 is 19 years old, save for the Thompson brothers who were just over 20. And then listen to these heights, okay? 1 through 10. 7'5", 6'2", 6'9", 6'7", 6'7", 6'8", 6'7", 6'7", 6'7", 6'9". Ryan, what's the most valuable position in the NBA right now?
Small forward.
Wings, right?
Yeah.
Love those wings, buffalo sauce. So this draft has a ton of buffalo sauce.
Scoot has the perfect name for his height.
What?
To be a point guard named Scoot, who's 6'2". It's like the universe just came together and was like, you're going to be a Scoot.
So the point, so I'm kind of agreeing with you. Yes, it's a deeper draft in a position of need around the league. Actually, a different question, a meta question. I wonder if having all of this influx of wing talent changes the calculus on how valuable wings are. And also probably this board looks the way it does because people know that wings are so highly valued, right? So
that's one of the other things to keep in mind too, is you look at that this is a wing draft. And so for one, scoring is at an all-time premium in the league. And then wings are also highly coveted. So if you're going to look at the Blazers landing outside the number 1 pick, and then you have this absolute load of wing players coming in, and you can then also trade a high volume scorer in Anthony Simons, you can address a lot of the multiple needs of teams.
I guess what I'm claiming here, as we're going to move away from the 9th pick, is there's a drop off. It's not that it's not deep at 10, but it's not the same value proposition for another team than if you had a top 4 pick. That's all. Do your own research, and you can disagree with me, but if you are reading stuff from The Ringer, I think does a really thoughtful job of putting their draft stuff together. I think there's a difference there. So we're going to take a brief break, but I just want to finish. They're probably not going to get the 9th pick, so we're probably not going to have to worry about it, but we will pick this up in just a few moments. Stick with us. We are indeed back. And Ryan, we've talked about the 9th pick way more than we need to, and way more than we will for any other individual pick. So we have found a fundamental disagreement about the value of draft picks depending on where they land. So let me pivot this question to you. You're looking at the lottery odds, you're looking at the picks. At what point, at what pick, or around what pick do you think a fundamentally different path is opened for the Blazers? Whatever you think that path may be, where does that switch happen for you?
What do you mean? Explain your question a little. So what?
No, I refuse. I have trained in executive coaching, and part of coaching is asking powerful questions, Ryan. So I will let you interpret that. No, I'm just kidding. I guess what I'm trying to ask is, the better the pick, the more options they have. Mm-hmm. So at what point, at which pick, or around what pick when we're watching the lottery and we're getting excited or we're getting sad, at what point do you think the Blazers fundamentally have like so many more options that they have like different paths available to them? Where does that switch happen for you, or does it?
Top four. So anything in the top four is by far the most options that they will have.
So basically, just really quick, because this is a good way actually to keep us moving, you think that it doesn't really matter what happens unless they get a top four pick. Like it's kind of all the same to you, 98765, kind of. You're kind of like, well, you know, I'm not stressing it too much. They're going to be able to trade it, but you think it really changes the top four. Yes.
The Cronin's job is significantly more difficult with a 5 through 9 pick. It's not as hard as if they were trying to do this with and had like the 15th pick, or if they only had the Knicks pick that they have this year. It's not that hard, but it is harder in that 5 through 9 range. That is when you have to start, you know, kind of sweetening the pot a little, throwing in a little more, you know, some more pieces. A top four, to be able to move that around, is like, at that point in time, you've already probably talked with teams, everyone else within your realm in the lottery. You know, hey, you know, if we end up with this, we can talk about this. Those doors are already open. Those conversations have probably, those embers have already been placed. So you're not starting from scratch. You're not starting from a place of weakness. Like, hey, pops up, you end up with the number 3 pick in this draft. All right, great. You already know which teams you've been talking to and what their interest is and how you can facilitate that. You continue on those conversations, and then if anything changes for your betterment, so be it.
So what do you think then, if you're just, and I know this is an impossible exercise, but let's say we're watching the draft lottery and, oh my God, they get a top 4 pick. Let's say they get picks number 4 or number 3. What do you think that means for the Blazers? Like, what do you think is like the best kind of reasonable outcome after this summer if they were to land a number 4 or number 3 pick?
I think an interesting option, and this would be the most difficult / nuclear option. And I think with some of the pieces on this roster, it could work, and it would keep you maybe a year or two away still from contention. But say the Blazers get, you know, the number 3 pick. I don't think it's necessarily outside the realm of the possibility that they could have the internal conversation and say, all right, number 3 and Dame for Wemby. To a team.
I don't see any other team doing that.
If a team would do it,
I don't see that.
I don't know. But you know, it's well, listen, because you kind of cracked it open anyway. Let's talk about the fun one. Cause
because this is to your point that you just made. I don't think any team, the Blazers or otherwise, I don't think they're trading the number 1 pick unless it is for a very specific kind of player. And I love Dame, and I don't think it's Dame. Like that's like, I think like,
are you of the mindset it's Giannis and that's it?
Yes, correct. Okay. I think that the injury history and the age and the current talent level and the future production, he's the only player, in my opinion, that all lines up for. Okay. So, like, I am in agreement with you on this, by the way. I just had to float it out there. I knew there was knew there was a trading Dame itch that you needed to scratch at some point in this pod. There's actually, there's not. Like, to me, like, I'm dumb. I'm of the opinion that they should try as hard as they possibly can, no matter the pick, to keep Dame, have him retire in Portland, and then build statues of him. Again, get what we talked about earlier about Brandon Roy. We need players to connect generations and to connect the fans with the franchise. And Damian Lillard is the only person who can do that. So, in my humble opinion, but so let me just give my opinion on the picks 4 and 3. Very good picks. I do think that you're getting into the territory where the teams may not value the pick as much as the player they'd be willing to trade for it. I actually think that picks 3 and 4, though, even with that in mind, I think pick number 4, pick number 3 are the most likely picks where you'd see something like Anthony Simons for Pascal Siakam as the base of the trade with the number 3 pick. I think that's when those kinds of trades start opening up. I think where I am a little less likely to think a trade will happen is with the number 2 pick specifically. So that's where, like, I don't know, like it's interesting to think. Well, yeah, go for it. Yeah.
Well, because I think with the number 2 pick, then it limits your options because now you're trying to find a team that's desperate for a point guard. Because, I mean, the general consensus in this draft has always been Victor 1, Scoot 2.
And then Scoot would be number 1 in a different draft.
Correct. Hands down, without a doubt. So, I mean, you kind of do, when you're looking at, like Brandon Miller with a small forward, which I have a question for him or about him for you later. But when you're looking at this, Scoot, now you're pretty much stuck dealing with a team that they're in desperate need of a point guard now, or, they're looking to build around a guard because they maybe have, something else, whatever, but they need a point guard. They're looking for what we were looking for when we got Dame. They need their point guard of the future. But yeah, so number 2, I think it opens a lot of doors, but it's very, I don't know, they're niche doors for lack of a better term. I trust, Cronin and Mike Schmitz in their short time have shown themselves to be good evaluators of draft talent, and I trust that they're going to take the best player available if they end up keeping the pick. I also trust that NBA front offices are, best player available oriented. So while I do think that him being a point guard and the consensus number 2 is a limiting factor, I don't think it's as limiting as you suggest. I think the thing for me, the reason why I think that pick may not be traded is just that the perceived value of the pick is going to be too different between what the Blazers think it's worth and what other teams think it's worth. Like I keep using Pascal Siakam, but I think there's a world in which that level of player, the Blazers would not be willing to trade Simons and the number 2 pick for Siakam, that they would ask for something else in return, and that the Raptors would balk. So that's where it's like, I think the value of that number 2 pick maybe a little bit squirrely. And I tried to do some research a little bit, and I was trying to go back and see which really high lottery picks have been traded on draft day. And you just don't see it happen a ton. The Blazers, you may remember long ago when LaMarcus Aldridge was swapped the number 2 pick for number 4. Blazers sent Tyrese Thomas to the Bulls. Blazers got LaMarcus Aldridge. That worked out great. But when you're just looking through them, it's not like there's this giant history to pull from. So I don't know, man. I think if the Blazers get number 2, I think they're keeping it, not because they want to keep it, but because they can't find the value that they believe that pick has. And actually, I hate to even say this, I think if the Blazers get the number 2 pick, I also think that puts the Dame era in jeopardy as well. For that exact reason. I'm a hard disagree on that.
Tell me more about that.
Again, I just think that it's the number 2 pick. I don't fully buy your logic with this value talk.
You don't think it'd be hard to trade, basically?
No. Again, it's that 5 through 9. That's it becomes a little more difficult. 2 through 4. Super easy, barely an inconvenience. Let's see if anybody gets that reference.
So let's think about this. If you are Joe Cronin or Mike Schmitz and you're telling yourself with the number 2 pick specifically, this pick would have been a number 1 pick in most any other draft. We just so happen to have a generational LeBron or above type of talent, possibly the best player who's ever played the game in the waiting. If not for that, this number 2 pick would be the first pick. If you value the pick that way, you're not going to trade it for Pascal Siakam. You're not going to trade that pick for
find a
Jimmy
different
Butler.
player than Pascal. Pascal is not going to fix anything with the Blazers, by the way.
Fine, I don't know.
I get it.
If
the Blazers trade a top 4 pick and it's not Pascal and OG, both of them coming back, no, I'm out on Pascal.
you're not going to trade what are other good examples of like teams that would be reasonably willing to trade players that the Blazers would be? You're not going to trade a number 1 pick in any other draft for Mikal Bridges, for example. Maybe that's a better name to use.
There we go. Now we're more in the.
Okay, thank you. Well, you should have piped up earlier, damn it. But like, I guess my point is this, and I want you to consider it and respond. The reason why I think the Blazers will have trouble trading the number 2 pick is because if they value that as an equivalent number 1 pick and other teams just don't, then they're not going to find what they consider equal value or close to equal value. That's the premise of my opinion.
I think, but other teams would value it that way.
That's so I think that is very fair. So tell me then, like, what does a trade look like for number 2? Because like, look, if they get a number 2 pick and other teams value it that highly, then I'm like, well, fuck, you don't have to trade Ant, right? Like that's when you start getting into like, well, then this pick by itself, right? This pick by itself is worth enough to get a really good player and keep Anthony Simons, or to spin it into like a bigger package with more stuff coming back. Like, I mean, that I hate to get too excited about it, but like, if you're really interested in like, I don't know, like that. Do you see what I'm getting at though? Like,
yes.
Because every trade that I think of involves Anthony Simons and a pick. But if you really think that the rest of the league values that number 2 pick as a number 1 pick in any other draft, then you're like, well, I don't want to trade Ant. So
other things to think about. And this is I have not run the numbers on this. Zero clue if it works. Don't care. Here's my pie in the sky hypothetical, of a dream. The Sixers don't end up closing out the series. They get bounced. The rumors of James Harden wanting to go back to Houston are true. Houston has to put together, something, I can't remember. Is Harden still under contract next year? Yes, I think he is. So, he could want to go back to Houston, or, 76ers don't want to lose him for nothing. So they're talking about a sign and trade. Well, Houston ends up with a top 4 lottery pick. All right, great. Let's end up getting a third party involved. Harden's coming back there. 76ers are like, well, shit, we lose Harden, Embiid's like, all right, I'm done. I'm out. Embiid now wants out. All right, great. Now we have two teams in the Blazers in Houston who could be projected to have top 4 lottery pick, or let's say they both end up there. Now we're looking at 3-team deals to get, Embiid out of Philly and Harden to Houston. And how are we facilitating this? They might view that as a lot better. Hey, we have these 2 top 4 picks in this year's draft to immediately start a rebuild, and whatever future picks from both those teams. Those are the kind of things where I look at. Like, I try not to always view it as a one-on-one scenario, because it always depends on what the hell that team thinks they need. Yeah. But if you look at it situationally, where things like that come up, how can the Blazers jump in? How can they use this pick and help themselves while, helping another team increase a trade package or facilitate moves like that? Those are the kind of things that I look at it with. Okay. So, by the way, I'm not hanging my hat on that, but I'm just using that as kind of like an example of like, one franchise is wanting to burn it down and start over. Where can the Blazers, jump in and, help them start over as fast as possible? And that's the kind of situation where I think of. Harden wants to go back to Houston. Great. Let's say Houston ends up with the number 3 pick. Blazers end up with, even the number 2 pick in this. And like I said, once Harden wants out, then Embiid wants out. All right, great. You don't think Philly could look at this and be like, oh, we have a number 2 and number 3 pick and a couple futures and, maybe whatever throw-in player you want salary wise to make that shit work. You don't think that they're going to think about getting that?
Yeah. And actually, listening to you talk, made me think, you were kind of saying it, but to reiterate this point that I didn't think about before in my own thinking, if the Blazers get the number 2 pick and another team has a pick that's a couple spots lower and they're really in love with a particular player, that opens up doors for the Blazers to get something in return for dropping down. And then they can still make a trade with Anthony Simons and say the number 5 pick or number 6 pick with another team, right? So it's like, they're getting something, plus they're still able to make that trade. So I actually didn't consider that, which shame on me. But all right, this has all been very interesting, Ryan. But let's cut the shit, bro. Let's talk about how how much are you shitting your pants in excitement if the Blazers get the number 1 pick? Because I got to tell you, I think my washing machine is going to be full. Just saying.
In all honesty, for as much as I've talked about it with so many people, and including, even you on this podcast right now, I'm not letting myself even think about it until
Come on, this is the only time to do it.
I am going full Brandon Sprague. Portland doesn't get nice things. So until we get nice things, I'm not going to believe we get nice things. I'm not going to, and this is coming from a lifelong Blazers fan. I have taught myself to not get my hopes up, appreciate the good things when they happen, but do not build up unrealistic expectations because it will only lead to a crushing defeat.
I think that part of being a well-rounded, well-adjusted person is considering all of the potential possibilities. And the reality is, Ryan, for as much time as we talked about picks number 4 and 3 and 2, there is an equal chance that the Blazers get the number 1 pick to any one of those other picks. And I don't think it's irresponsible for us to simply imagine what if for a moment and then shelve it in the appropriate 10.5% size box that it belongs. That's not a huge chance, right? Mm-hmm. Like you're talking about 1 in 10. If you're on Survivor, the shot in the dark is 1 in 6. If you are, I can't even think of another correlator. The chances are not very high. By the way, the shot in the dark has only been played successfully once in Survivor history for all of you Survivor heads out there. And it happened this season, in fact. So yes, but fine. You don't want to talk about it. I do really quick. If the Blazers, if they get the top pick, I am going to have a full body convulsion. I'm going to irresponsibly be tweeting. I'm going to be irresponsibly Facebooking. I'm going to be irresponsibly texting. I'm going to be irresponsibly Instagramming. My wife is going to be so upset with me, and so are you, because everyone close to me is going to feel the absolute unbridled enthusiasm that I have for the Blazers getting number 1 pick. So yes, my washing machine will be full of poopy pants. I'm going to be so excited. It would be a franchise altering event in a way that we can't quite comprehend. I'm happy to dream about that for a moment because there may be a moment when we can't dream about that anymore. And so I'm going to appreciate that I can do that right now.
Well, I guess the only planning that I should do is to figure out who I'm going to need to call for bail money, because if it happens and I'm at Brick's Tavern, I may just strip down naked and go running through the streets. And I'm just hoping that for one, everybody else in Brick's Tavern is also joining me in that same. I mean, I'm surrounded by Blazer fans at that point in time. But yeah, I may need to go.
There's going to be people are going to throw beer in the air. Hopefully not the glasses. Like there's going to be shit being thrown in the air. There's going to be hugs. People will be honking their horns. It's honestly I get that it probably won't happen, but if it does, it's going to be fucking cool. Like seriously. Yeah.
Do we want to end this by taking a spin on the tankathon?
Oh Lord, I'll leave that decision to you. My first thought is I'm so in this little hope phase and I love being in it, but we do have to check back in with reality. Sure, go for it.
All right.
So this is great radio, Brian. You are bringing the full weight of reality and logic to this discussion as you go to Tankathon and you hit the button to see what
I'm
the
on my
simulation
7th time of hitting the button. I'm not going to say anything until it gives you happy news.
Jesus Christ. No. Come on. No. What was the, just share when you hit it the first time.
Okay, I can go in order. It went 6, 8, 4, 2, and now we're back at 6.
So I think that's
hey, what you just said. Go, number 1.
Okay. 6, 8, 4, 2, 6, 1, right? So, yes. In those numbers that you just heard, you hear where the likelihood it's going to probably end up as slightly underwhelming. Having said that, again, I don't want to ignore the fact that there's a nearly 50% chance that the Blazers get a top 4 pick. The tanking that they did was not for naught. It mattered. The Blazers have a very good chance at a top 4 pick. And what they did this year, knowing that the season was not going to end in a championship or anything close. The tanking they did was meaningful and it mattered. And it doesn't matter if they get a top pick or not. The fact that they're in this position where you and I can talk about a nearly 50% chance of a top 4 pick means that it mattered and it worked. And also it raised the floor of the potential worst pick they could get, which also matters. And if you're a big Ryan Whitledge supporter, you believe it doesn't even matter if they get the number 9 pick. They can still make a cool trade. If you're a Brandon Golder supporter, then you're a little bit more pessimistic about it. But like, that's all. Like, I think like I'm excited for the draft lottery. I will be finding a way to watch. This sounds kind of awful, and never mind. I'm going to find a way to watch. That's the point. I wish I could join you at Brick's Tavern and everyone else there. Is there anything else that you want to touch on before we adjourn?
No, sir. No, sir.
Okay. I just see you clicking around over there. What are you doing there?
I'm just making sure that it's on ESPN.
It is. Yeah. Okay. And what I don't know is whether or not League Pass is carrying it. You got to imagine that they are. By the way, one cool thing about being in New Zealand, I can legally access NBA League Pass from New Zealand, and I don't get iced out at any of the games, and the price is actually pretty reasonable. So shout out to New Zealand for that. Nice. I guess I'm saying move to New Zealand for League Pass. That's what I'm saying.
I mean, there's plenty of other websites that are cheaper than the move to New Zealand.
Man, you know what? It honestly is nice to see, like, you get the games on record, you can pause them, you can go back. Like, it's worth, again, it's a little bit more reasonable and it's safe. But if you want to talk that about anything else, you can always do that at WeLikeTheBlazers@gmail.com. Find us at Like the Blazers on Twitter. You can find him at what's your Twitter handle?
God, wow, you were really off that site for a while. The Witty Ryan.
The Witty Ryan. I'm back on Twitter. Why am I there? At GoldenPDX. Look, man, I did a hard run today. I'm ending my term of school. I have one more term before I graduate. I'm really excited about that. I started a new job. I had shit's going down for me, so my brain is whatever. But you can reach out to us. We appreciate you all. I hope, last thing, when we re-adjourn, that we are just unreasonably excited for some cool thing that happened during the draft lottery.
After I have been bailed out of jail and you have done all the laundry.
Even if it's not a number 1 pick, I hope something cool happens. Tune in next Tuesday. That's Ryan. I'm Brandon. Appreciate you all. Until next time, go Blazers.
Go Blazers.